Commander Elena Rodriguez stood at the observation deck of the Europa Defense Station, watching the last remnants of the Third Fleet disappear into quantum space. To any observer, this would appear to be yet another human retreat, another defeat at the hands of the Nexeri Collective. The massive crystalline ships of the alien armada had already begun their victory formation, their energy signatures pulsing with what Elena could only interpret as satisfaction. "Status report on Project Prometheus," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The holographic display materialized before her, showing the vast underground facilities beneath Europa's icy surface. "Final calibrations complete," Commander reported Dr. Marcus Way, his image flickering slightly due to the quantum interference from the Nexeri's proximity. "The quantum cores are stable, and the biomimetic learning systems are operating at optimal efficiency. We're ready." Elena allowed herself a small smile. For 15 years, humanity had appeared to be losing this war. 15 years of retreats, of abandoned colonies, of apparent defeats. The Nexeri Collective, with their crystalline ships and photonic weaponry, had pushed humanity back to the solar system itself. They believed they were witnessing the death throes of a species. They were wrong. Deep beneath Europa's ice, in vast chambers carved by thermal drills and quantum excavators, humanity had been building something unprecedented. The defeats weren't defeats at all. They were data-gathering exercises. Every engagement with the Nexeri had been meticulously recorded, analyzed, and used to perfect humanity's response. "Show me the Helios array," Elena commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing a massive underground dock where 12 ships hung in perfect formation. Unlike traditional human vessels, these ships seemed to shift and flow, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal. They were the culmination of Project Prometheus, vessels that combined quantum engineering with artificial intelligence in ways the Nexeri couldn't comprehend. The Nexeri based their entire strategy on their technological superiority. Dr. Wee continued, his excitement barely contained. "Their crystalline ships can adapt to any conventional weapon we use against them, but they've never encountered quantum-enabled biomimetic technology before. They don't know that we've been learning, evolving, preparing." Elena watched as the status indicators on all 12 ships turned green. The Helios array was ready for deployment. Each ship was equipped with quantum cores that could manipulate the fabric of space-time itself, and AI systems that could predict and counter Nexeri tactics before they even executed them. "Begin evacuation protocol Omega," Elena ordered. Throughout the station, hidden systems hummed to life. The Nexeri would detect the energy signatures soon, but by then it would be too late. Broadcast the surrender message as planned. Across all frequencies, the Europa Defense Station began transmitting humanity's apparent capitulation. Elena could almost picture the satisfaction of the Nexeri commanders as they received the message. Their victory was complete, or so they thought. "All personnel are in position," reported Lieutenant James Chen from his tactical station. "Quantum shielding is active and holding. The Nexeri fleet is maintaining their standard victory formation." Elena took a deep breath. This moment had been 15 years in the making. Every retreat, every apparent defeat, had led to this. The Nexeri believed they had developed the perfect method of warfare, that their crystalline ships and adaptive technology made them invincible. They had never considered that humanity might develop something completely outside their understanding of physics. "Send the activation signal to all Prometheus units," she commanded. "Execute Operation Phoenix." Beneath the ice of Europa, 12 quantum cores pulsed in perfect synchronization. The massive doors of the underground dock began to open, and the ships of the Helios array powered up their systems. As they did, their hulls shifted from solid metal to something else entirely, a state of matter that existed between quantum possibilities. The war wasn't ending today. It was just beginning. The Nexeri flagship Eternal Crystal hung in space like a massive prism, its crystalline structure refracting the light of distant stars. Inside its command center, High Commander Zixtal received the humans' surrender transmission with what passed for satisfaction among his species. The war had progressed exactly as their strategic algorithms had predicted. The inferior human technology had proven no match for their adaptive crystalline ships. Then the quantum sensors screamed. Beneath Europa's icy surface, massive energy signatures erupted from what their scans had dismissed as simple defense installations. The readings made no sense. Matter existing in multiple states simultaneously, energy patterns that defied their understanding of physics. High Commander, the sensor operator's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. We're detecting anomalies, impossible anomalies. Through the quantum distortions emerged the Helios array. 12 ships that seemed to flicker between existence and non-existence, their hulls rippling like liquid mercury. The Nexary's adaptive sensors tried to analyze them and failed. These vessels weren't just operating with advanced technology, they were operating outside the very laws of physics as the Nexari understood them. Aboard the lead ship of the array, now designated Phoenix 1, Dr. Marcus Way worked at his quantum engineering station. Commander Rodriguez, the biomimetic systems are fully integrated with the quantum cores. The ships are learning. Elena watched as the tactical display showed the Nexari fleet's reaction. Their perfectly ordered formation began to shift as their adaptive algorithms attempted to analyze the threat. But how do you adapt to something that exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously? Deploy the quantum mesh, Elena ordered. Let's show them what 15 years of preparation really means. The 12 ships of the Helios array moved in perfect synchronization, their quantum cores pulsing in harmony. Between them, space itself began to warp and twist as they generated a quantum field that existed in all possible states at once. The Nexary's crystal ships, designed to adapt to any conventional attack, found themselves facing something entirely outside their paradigm. Their adaptive algorithms are attempting to compensate, Lieutenant Chen reported, monitoring the enemy fleet's reactions. But they can't adapt to what they can't comprehend. Their crystalline structure is trying to reconfigure itself, but there's no stable configuration that can counter our quantum field. The first shots were fired. Not conventional weapons, but controlled quantum events that propagated through space like ripples in reality itself. Where they touched the Nexari ships, the crystalline structures began to phase between states, their carefully maintained molecular patterns disrupting as quantum uncertainty took hold. High Commander Zixtal watched in growing alarm as his fleet's supposedly invincible adaptive technology failed to counter this new threat. Impossible, he transmitted across the Nexari command network. Their technology was primitive. We monitored their development. We saw their defeats. Elena's voice cut across all frequencies, transmitted directly into the quantum crystalline network the Nexari used for communication. You saw what we wanted you to see. Every retreat was planned. Every defeat was a chance to study your adaptations. We weren't running from you. We were learning about you. The Helios array moved as one, their quantum fields intensifying. The ships themselves seemed to blur, existing in multiple tactical positions simultaneously. The Nexary's predictive algorithms, trying to calculate possible attack vectors, crashed as they encountered scenarios that violated their fundamental understanding of reality. Second phase initiating, Dr. Way announced. The biomimetic systems have compiled enough data. We're ready to begin active countermeasures. Elena nodded, watching as the quantum cores of all 12 ships pulsed in unison. Humanity didn't spend the last 15 years cowering in defeat. She transmitted to the Nexari fleet. We spent it transcending the very limits of what you thought was possible. Your crystal ships can adapt to anything within your understanding of physics. We simply stepped outside that understanding entirely. The quantum mesh between the Helios array ships began to pulse with increasing intensity. In response, the crystalline structures of the Nexari vessels started to vibrate at frequencies that threatened their structural integrity. Their adaptive algorithms, desperately trying to find a solution, only made things worse. Each attempted adaptation created new vulnerabilities to the quantum field effects. High Commander Zixtal watched as the impossible unfolded before him. The humans hadn't been defeated. They had been evolving, preparing, waiting for this moment. And now, as reality itself seemed to bend around their quantum ships, he realized that the true war was only just beginning. The void between Europa and Mars became a canvas of impossible physics. The Nexari fleet, their crystalline ships still struggling to adapt, launched a desperate counteroffensive. Beams of concentrated photonic energy lanced out toward the Helios array, only to pass through ships that existed in multiple locations simultaneously. "They're attempting to isolate our quantum signatures," Lieutenant Chen reported, his hands dancing across the neural interface. "Their crystalline matrix is reconfiguring to emit anti-quantum pulses." Elena had expected this. The Nexari weren't just going to accept defeat. They would adapt, evolve, fight back with everything they had. That's exactly what humanity had counted on. "Execute Protocol Chimera," she ordered. Dr. Wei's eyes widened at the command. "Already? But Commander, we haven't tested it under combat conditions." "That's exactly why we're using it now," Elena interrupted. "They expect us to follow conventional tactical doctrine, to hold our best weapons in reserve. We're not giving them time to adapt." Throughout the Helios array, quantum cores pulsed with new patterns. The ship's biomimetic systems began implementing changes that had only existed in theoretical simulations until now. The liquid metal hulls of the human vessels started to fragment, each piece maintaining its own quantum state while remaining connected through subatomic entanglement. High Commander Zixtal watched in horror as the human ships literally broke apart, transforming into swarms of quantum-shifted fragments. Each piece was now a weapon unto itself, capable of existing in multiple states and locations simultaneously. The Nexari's tactical displays crashed, unable to track targets that defied the basic laws of cause and effect. "Their strategy is incomprehensible," Zixtal transmitted across the command network. "They're violating every principle of tactical doctrine." "That's because we're not fighting according to your principles anymore." Elena's voice cut through their network again. "Humanity spent 15 years studying how you think, how you fight, how you adapt. We're not just countering your tactics, we're countering your entire strategic philosophy." The quantum swarms swept through the Nexari fleet like schools of metallic fish swimming through water. Where they passed, crystalline structures began to resonate at frequencies that threatened to tear them apart. The Nexari ship's adaptive algorithms worked against them, each attempted adaptation creating new vulnerabilities that the quantum fragments exploited. "Biomimetic analysis complete," Dr. Wei announced, his voice tense with concentration. "Their crystalline matrix is attempting to synchronize with our quantum frequencies, implementing countermeasures now." The swarms suddenly shifted tactics, their movements becoming even more unpredictable. Each fragment now operated on its own quantum frequency, making it impossible for the Nexari to establish a unified defense. Their attempts to adapt to one frequency left them vulnerable to others. But the Nexari weren't finished. From their flagship, High Commander Zixtal activated emergency protocols that had never been used in combat. The crystalline ships began to merge, their structures flowing together to form a massive geometric lattice that pulsed with energy. "Energy spike detected," Lieutenant Chen warned. "They're channeling power through their combined crystalline matrix. Whatever they're planning, it's big." Elena studied the tactical display, watching as the Nexari lattice began to emit waves of destructive interference that threatened to collapse the quantum states of the human swarms. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment when the Nexari would reveal their ultimate weapon. "All ships, execute final protocol," she commanded. "Dr. Wei, initiate quantum resonance cascade." The fragments of the Helios array began to pulse with new energy patterns. Instead of fighting against the Nexari's interference waves, they synchronized with them, adding their own quantum fluctuations to the mix. The combined effect created a feedback loop that the Nexari hadn't anticipated. Impossible, Zixtal transmitted as he watched his carefully constructed lattice begin to destabilize. You couldn't have predicted this response. Our merger protocol was never used before. We didn't need to predict it, Elena responded. Our ships aren't just following programs or protocols. They're learning, adapting, evolving in real time. Every move you make teaches us something new. Every adaptation you attempt gives us more data to work with. The quantum fragments of the human fleet began to coalesce again, but not into their original forms. They were taking new shapes, configurations that responded directly to the Nexary's latest tactics. The battle was becoming a rapid evolution of strategy and counter-strategy, but with one crucial difference. Humanity's quantum ships weren't limited by the need to maintain logical consistency in their adaptations. The space around Europa had become a quantum storm of impossibilities. Reality itself seemed to twist and bend as the merged Nexary lattice fought against the ever-evolving human fleet. The crystalline structure of the alien ships pulsed with energies never before witnessed in combat, while the quantum fragments of the Helios array danced through dimensions in patterns that defied conventional physics. Their lattice is attempting to establish a resonance lock on our quantum signatures, Dr. Wei reported, his voice strained as he interpreted the cascade of data flowing through his neural interface. They're trying to force our ships back into a single quantum state. Elena watched as the massive crystalline structure began emitting waves of coherent energy that threatened to collapse the quantum superposition of their vessels. The Nexary had finally realized they couldn't adapt to something that existed in multiple states, so they were attempting to force the human ships to exist in just one. All ships, initiate Protocol Omega, Elena commanded. Dr. Wei, prepare the quantum void generators. High Commander Zixtal observed the human fleet's response with growing concern. His species had conquered 12 galaxies, their crystalline technology adapting and overcoming every defense they encountered. But these humans, they weren't just fighting back, they were breaking the very rules of reality. The quantum fragments of the Helios array suddenly began to pulse with a new pattern. Instead of resisting the Nexary's attempt to collapse their quantum states, they leaned into it. Each fragment seemed to collapse into a single state, but not the state the Nexary were trying to force them into. Quantum void generators online, Dr. Wei announced. Warning: stability matrices are showing unprecedented fluctuations. That's exactly what we want, Elena responded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Lieutenant Chen, status of the Nexary lattice. Their energy output is maximal, Chen reported. They've committed fully to the resonance lock. They think they have us. The space between the two fleets began to darken as the quantum void generators activated. The Nexary lattice's energy waves, designed to collapse quantum states, instead began to interact with the artificial void in ways that defied their creator's understanding. Your greatest strength has become your weakness, Elena transmitted to the Nexary command network. You built your entire civilization on the principle of adaptation, but you can only adapt to things you understand. We've stepped beyond understanding, beyond physics, beyond logic itself. The quantum fragments of the human fleet began to emit their own resonance patterns, perfectly out of phase with the Nexary's attempts to lock them down. The result was a cascade of quantum interactions that began to tear at the fabric of space-time itself. Warning, Lieutenant Chen called out. Quantum field instabilities are approaching critical levels. The void generators are creating something. Between the fleets, reality itself seemed to fold inward. The Nexary lattice, still attempting to force order onto chaos, found itself being pulled into patterns it couldn't adapt to fast enough. Their crystalline structure, perfect for adaptation under normal circumstances, became brittle when faced with physics that changed faster than they could evolve. Impossible, Zixtal transmitted, his signal distorted by the quantum distortions. Our simulations show this level of quantum manipulation should destroy both fleets. You're risking everything. No, Elena responded. We're risking nothing, because we've already done this before. Why do you think we chose Europa for our last stand? This moon has been our testing ground for 15 years. The truth dawned on Zixtal too late. The humans hadn't just been developing new technology. They had been practicing this exact scenario. The quantum storms, the void generators, the precise resonance patterns. They had calibrated everything to Europa's specific gravitational field and spatial coordinates. Final phase initiating. Dr. Wei announced as the quantum void expanded. Biomimetic systems are predicting total crystalline structure failure in the Nexari lattice within 30 seconds. The merged Nexari ships began to splinter as quantum resonances tore through their perfectly ordered structure. Their adaptation algorithms, trying desperately to compensate, only accelerated the process. Each attempted evolution created new vulnerabilities that the quantum field exploited. Elena watched as the massive alien lattice began to break apart, its crystalline perfection unable to maintain coherence in the face of calculated chaos. This wasn't just a victory of technology, it was a victory of philosophy. The Nexari had built their civilization on the principle of adapting to overcome any obstacle. Humanity had responded by becoming something that couldn't be adapted to. The quantum void that had torn apart the Nexari lattice began to stabilize, leaving behind a graveyard of crystalline fragments that glittered in the light of distant stars. The Helios array reformed from its quantum state, 12 ships now hovering in perfect formation around the remains of what had been the most powerful fleet in known space. Quantum field stabilization complete, Dr. Wei reported, his voice carrying both exhaustion and awe. The void generators are powering down. We've done it, Commander. We've actually done it. Elena stood at her command station, watching as the tactical display showed the full extent of their victory. The remaining Nexari ships, those that hadn't been part of the lattice, hung motionless in space. Their adaptive algorithms had essentially frozen, unable to process the reality of what they had just witnessed. Incoming transmission, Lieutenant Chen announced. It's from High Commander Zixtal's command ship. A holographic image that appeared showed the crystalline form of the Nexari commander, its usual perfect geometry, now showing signs of stress fractures. Commander Rodriguez, Zixtal's voice carried an emotion that had never before been heard from a Nexari. Uncertainty. We request terms. Elena took a moment to consider the historical significance of this moment. For the first time in their known history, the Nexari collective was asking for terms of surrender. Your entire society is built on the principle of consuming and adapting to other civilizations, she responded. How can we trust any agreement we make? Because you have shown us something we thought impossible, Zixtal replied. In all our expansion across 12 galaxies, we have never encountered a species that chose to transcend adaptation itself. We believe that all technological progress followed a predictable path of evolution. You proved that belief false. Dr. Wei's console suddenly lit up with new data. Commander, I'm detecting quantum field fluctuations from the remaining Nexari ships. But it's different from before. They're attempting to match our quantum signature patterns. Elena understood what was happening. The Nexari weren't trying to adapt to defeat them. They were trying to adapt to understand them. It was perhaps the first time in their history that they had used their technological capabilities for something other than domination. Your terms are this, Elena transmitted. The Nexari collective will withdraw from all human space. You will return every colony you've taken, and you will assist in their restoration. But more importantly, you will learn to coexist rather than consume. And if we refuse? Zixtal asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Then we will demonstrate that what you witnessed today was only the beginning of what humanity is capable of, Elena replied. We spent 15 years preparing for this battle. Imagine what we could develop in times of peace. The quantum sensors detected a shift in the crystalline structure of the Nexari ships. They were reconfiguring themselves, but not into combat formations. Instead, they were adopting patterns that resonated harmoniously with the quantum field still lingering in space. We accept your terms, Zixtal announced, but we request something in return. We wish to learn from you, not to adapt and consume, but to understand. Your species has shown us that there are paths of evolution we never conceived of. Elena smiled. This was more than just a military victory. It was a fundamental shift in the relationship between two species. We accept. After all, humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our adaptability. It's our ability to teach, to share, to help others grow without losing themselves. The quantum cores of the Helios array pulsed one final time, creating a display of light and energy that rippled across space, not as a show of force, but as a demonstration of possibility. The remaining Nexari ships responded in kind, their crystalline structures refracting the energy in patterns that created a stunning stellar dance. Dr. Wei's voice was quiet as he observed the display. It's beautiful, isn't it? Two completely different approaches to technology, creating something new together. That's the future we fought for, Elena responded. Not just survival, not just victory, but the chance to build something greater than either of our species could achieve alone. As the combined light show of human and Nexari technology illuminated the space around Europa, Elena thought about the long journey that had led to this moment. Humanity had faced extinction and responded not with desperation, but with innovation. They had taken their greatest weakness, their inability to adapt as quickly as the Nexari, and turned it into their greatest strength by choosing to evolve beyond adaptation itself. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Across human space, hidden quantum shipyards would now be revealed, ready to rebuild and expand. The technology they had developed wouldn't be sealed away, but shared and developed further. And most importantly, they had gained something no one had thought possible: the opportunity to turn an implacable enemy into a partner in exploration and discovery. Send word to Earth, Elena commanded. Tell them that Operation Phoenix is complete, and that a new chapter in human history is about to begin.